It started with glass dozens of them, polished, gleaming, lined like soldiers waiting for war. Champagne trickled like gold waterfalls into their fluted mouths as laughter echoed through the grand ballroom of the Alden Foundation's annual winter gala. Crystal chandeliers sparkled above tuxedos and couture gowns, and a jazz trio played something smooth that no one was really listening to. And just beyond the velvet ropes, unnoticed, wiping down a handprint from a mirrored wall, stood Cal Rayner. His reflection looked tired. Clean-shaven hair combed with practiced efficiency, a navy blazer, slightly too big at the shoulders, borrowed. Everything about him whispered, "Don't cause trouble. Don't stand out." He didn't belong here, and he knew it. Cal had just finished resetting the stage lights, a last-minute request from one of the junior assistants. "You're a janitor, but you fix things right," she'd said, already walking away. He fixed things, yes, but not in this room. Not in this world. Still, he stayed because of her. His eyes shifted up past the sea of diamonds and designer smiles to the mezzanine balcony above. There she was, Lily, his 7-year-old daughter, blonde curls tucked into a little braid, her small hands clutching a crinkled sheet of lyrics. She stood beside the children's choir, warming up for their performance later in the evening. She waved. He smiled subtly. One small wave back. No one saw it, and that's how Cal liked it. "Who's the guy in the corner? The one with the knockoff blazer?" Laughter followed the question, hushed but pointed. "He's the janitor, I think." "God, did someone actually invite him?" "Nah, probably just sneaked in for the free food." A few interns and junior investors huddled near the open bar, wine in hand, eyes glinting with cruel amusement. One of them, Nathan Slick Hair Old Money, grinned. "Wouldn't it be hilarious if we got him to give a speech? Like a man of the people moment." They laughed again, and the seed was planted. Back on the balcony, Vivian Alden stepped out of the green room, clipboard in hand. The CEO, 36, immaculate, ice in her posture, steel in her voice. She didn't walk, she arrived. Every space she entered seemed to shift around her presence. Her dress, a deep midnight blue, shimmered with every turn. But tonight her focus wasn't on the room. It was on a little girl standing just off-key. "You're Lily, right?" she asked gently, crouching beside her. "You drew this?" She held up a folded piece of construction paper, a crayon drawing of 3 figures beneath falling snow standing under a glowing yellow star. "That's me," Lily pointed, "and that's my dad, and I think that's someone who's going to find us one day." Vivian blinked. "What do you mean?" "I don't know yet," Lily said matter-of-factly, "but Daddy says the stars always remember who we are, even if people don't." Vivian's breath caught for a beat longer than it should have. She looked at the paper again. The snowy scene stirred something buried deep, too deep to name. A memory, a feeling. It slipped away before she could catch it. Meanwhile, Cal stood near the ballroom exit, debating whether to stay or make a quiet retreat. Lily's performance wouldn't be for another hour, and his presence was making people uncomfortable. He could feel it, the polite glances, the strategic positioning of bodies, so he wouldn't end up in a photo. He turned toward the exit, then paused. A waiter had just dropped a tray of silverware. People stepped away with expressions of horror like someone had spilled sewage. The waiter, barely 20, was on the verge of tears. Cal moved without thinking. Down on one knee, napkin in hand, he helped collect the fallen pieces. He didn't say much, just worked quietly until it was done. Then he stood, gave the young man a reassuring nod, and faded back toward the shadows. No applause, no acknowledgement, except one. Vivian had been watching from the balcony above. She saw everything. The way Cal didn't hesitate. The calm in his movements. The dignity. Something about it gnawed at her. There was a gentleness in him. Familiar. Real. Back at the bar, Nathan poured another drink. "I say we make him the opening act." Opening act for the charity spotlight moment. You know where we usually bring up some sob story for the donors to clap at? Why not the janitor? Oh my God, that would be epic. I'll talk to the MC. Later, backstage, one of the event coordinators tapped Cal on the shoulder. You're Cal, right? He stiffened. Yeah, we'd like to invite you to say a few words during the donor spotlight. Quick thank you. For your service, you know my service to the community, to the venue. Just a minute on stage. Very casual. Cal hesitated. His instincts screamed no. But then he looked up toward the balcony. Lily was there, still watching. She gave him a thumbs up, mouthing, "You got this, Daddy." And just like that, he nodded. Okay. Great. You'll go up right before the choir. As he waited by the curtain, the MC stepped up to the podium. Before we welcome our incredible children's choir, we'd like to take a moment to recognize someone very special. A man who, though often unseen, has been a quiet hero among us. People murmured, eyebrows raised. Please welcome Mr. Cal Rayner. Spotlight. Applause forced hesitant. Cal walked up the stairs. One foot, then another. His hands trembled. His heart pounded so loudly he couldn't hear anything else. He stepped into the light. Dozens of eyes locked on him. Some curious, some amused, some already laughing. His voice caught in his throat. He looked down at the microphone, then up at Lily. Her smile faltered. Her little hand gripped the railing. That's when he heard it. A whisper. He's just the janitor. And then another. This can't be real. Is this a joke? Laughter like the start of a slow wave rippled through the ballroom. Cal swallowed hard. And that's when Vivian Alden rose from her table. For a moment, everything froze. The clinking of glasses, the murmur of gossip, even the soft notes from the jazz trio stopped as if the air itself had gone still. Every eye in the ballroom turned toward her. Vivian Alden stood at the head table, her chair pushed back with a grace that didn't ask for permission. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't have to. Her presence did all the talking. She was the kind of woman who didn't just walk through a room, she commanded it. Eyes followed her not because she demanded it, but because they didn't know how not to. Tall, composed, in a dress that shimmered like midnight rain and heels that clicked with finality. The CEO of Alden Medical Holdings, the architect of this entire night, the woman who rebuilt a crumbling pharmaceutical empire after her father's death and turned it into one of the most ethically lauded names in healthcare. But tonight none of that mattered. Tonight she wasn't the CEO. She was the only person who saw what everyone else refused to. A man standing under the lights trying to keep his dignity as laughter slithered through the cracks in his armor. Vivian stepped away from the table. One deliberate step, then another. On stage, Cal could feel his pulse pounding behind his eyes. He wasn't built for this. He was a man who fixed things quietly, who cleaned when everyone else had left, who told bedtime stories in the back seat of a second-hand truck during hard months, and who'd learned to swallow pride like it was part of his morning routine. He wasn't supposed to be here. But Lily was watching, and her little face confused, frightened was what kept him from running. He leaned toward the mic, voice hoarse. "Good evening, everyone. And then click, click, click. The sound of Vivian's heels against the marble floor cut through the laughter like a razor through silk. Heads turned, mouths closed. The MC blinked in confusion as Vivian walked past him up the short steps onto the stage. She didn't acknowledge the crowd. She walked straight to Cal, and then softly to the mic. Enough. Silence. Not respectful silence. Stunned silence. Vivian turned to face the ballroom. Her voice was calm but laced with something far more dangerous than anger, disappointment. "You mocked the only man here who doesn't wear a mask." Mouths fell open, eyes widened. Vivian looked to her left. One of the junior board members, Nathan, shifted uncomfortably in his seat. She held his gaze for 3 long seconds until he looked down. "Let me tell you what I see," she continued. I see a father, a man who works when you sleep, who shows up when others don't, who doesn't need applause to keep going. I see more character in him than in half the platinum cufflinks in this room." A few people began to whisper. Vivian turned back to Cal. He looked like he wanted the floor to swallow him whole. So she smiled gently privately just for him. And then she did something no one in the room expected. She reached into the pocket of her dress, pulled out a small velvet box. Not the flashy kind. Not new. The corners were a little worn. She opened it. Inside was a simple silver ring, her mother's. Vivian knelt. The crowd gasped. Lily, up on the balcony, clapped her hands over her mouth. Vivian looked up at Cal. Her voice dropped tender as the first snow. "You didn't ask for this. You didn't expect it. But if anyone deserves a proposal tonight, it's you." The silence turned electric. Cal couldn't breathe. He looked out over the crowd, their eyes, their disbelief, and then at Vivian kneeling in front of him. He didn't speak. He couldn't. And in that moment, something broke not in him, but around him. The glass wall between his world and theirs shattered. Vivian rose without waiting for his answer. She handed him the ring. He didn't take it. She didn't force it. Instead, she turned back to the mic. "To those of you laughing, you've just revealed who you are." Then she looked up toward the balcony straight at Lily. "And to those of you watching, wondering if kindness still exists in this world, it does." She stepped off the stage. Back in the mezzanine, Lily looked down at her father with wide, glistening eyes. She whispered, barely audible, "She saw you." Backstage, Vivian handed her clipboard to a stunned assistant and whispered, "Don't follow me." She disappeared into the hallway, her hands shaking. Cal didn't move. He stared at the ring still warm from her palm. The stage lights dimmed. Applause started hesitant at first, then scattered uncertain. But Cal didn't hear it, because in his heart, one sentence echoed louder than any microphone: "She saw me." The sound of the gala faded as Cal slipped through the staff exit into the cold Manhattan night. The door clicked shut behind him, muffling the orchestra, the murmurs, the confusion that still swirled in that chandeliered room. He needed air. Not just oxygen, but space. Silence. Something that wasn't wrapped in velvet or dipped in champagne. The alley behind the hotel was quiet, save for the soft hiss of steam from a nearby vent. Snow hadn't started yet, but the sky promised it would. That heavy gray stillness before winter speaks. Cal sat on an overturned milk crate, elbows on knees, the ring Vivian had handed him still clenched in his palm. His fingers trembled. Not from the cold, from memory, from everything he had spent the last 25 years trying not to remember. He was 13 when it happened. Montana. A youth retreat his church had scraped together funds for. He didn't know a soul there, not really. Just that it was a week away from his father's drinking, and the long silences that came after the yelling stopped. The snowstorm came in faster than the guides expected. By dusk it had swallowed the trails, erased the sky, and howled through the pine like a thing alive. Cal was in cabin 3, alone, reading a dog-eared comic book by flashlight when he heard it a scream. He thought at first it was the wind, but then it came again. Sharp. Human. He grabbed the only jacket he had barely thick enough for fall and ran into the white. He found her near the collapsed edge of the trail, one leg pinned beneath a fallen branch, tears frozen to her cheeks. A girl, maybe 11, blonde. Her breath came in panicked clouds. "Don't move," Cal said, voice cracking. "I'll help. No one's coming," she sobbed. "I am," he whispered. He didn't ask questions. He didn't wait. He pulled until her leg came free, ignoring the way she screamed. Then, without thinking, he scooped her into his arms and began to walk toward the storm, not away. He didn't stop, even when his legs gave out, even when the cold burned his lungs, even when she passed out in his arms. He made it to the main lodge hours later, collapsed just outside the door. They took her, rushed her to the emergency cabin. And Cal. He vanished, didn't stay for recognition, didn't even give a last name. The next morning, he was gone. Returned home. Returned to no one noticing. He hadn't thought about that night in years. Not until now. Not until the moment Vivian Alden stood in front of him and said the words, "If anyone deserves a proposal tonight, it's him." The door creaked behind him. Daddy Lily. Her coat too big, her pink boots crunching softly on the pavement. Her little face peeking out with worry. "You okay?" she asked. Cal tried to smile. "Yeah, baby girl. Just needed some air." She walked over, climbing into his lap without waiting for permission. "I was scared," she said. When they laughed. He wrapped his arms around her. "Me too." But then she stood up. Cal didn't reply. Lily looked up at him thoughtful. "Daddy. Why'd she do that?" "I don't know." She didn't laugh. "No," he said quietly. She didn't. Lily pulled something from her pocket. A small folded piece of paper worn at the creases. "I gave her this earlier. Remember?" She opened it. It was the same drawing Vivian had held backstage. 3 figures. A little girl, a man, and someone else, vague, distant glowing. Snow falling. A soft yellow star overhead. I told her the third person was someone we hadn't met yet, but I think maybe it was her all along. Cal's throat tightened. He blinked hard. She handed him the drawing. "You can give it back to her, if you want." He smiled, kissed her forehead. "You're the bravest kid I know." She grinned. "You're the bravest janitor I know." They both laughed. The next morning, Cal was sweeping the West Wing hallway of Alden Medical's administrative center when he passed one of the digital news tickers in the lobby. It flashed, "Billionaire CEO proposes to janitor at charity gala, real or PR stunt." His stomach dropped. The article played on loop. Footage of the moment-grainy cell phone video already had over 3 million views. Comments were pouring in. Some praised Vivian. Others mocked her. Still more picked Cal apart like a specimen, his appearance, his past, even his daughter. He shut the screen off, walked away. Vivian sat in her office on the 40th floor staring at the same footage but with very different eyes. She hadn't planned it. She didn't even remember pulling the ring from her pocket. It had just happened. Like a memory rising from snow. Like a voice from 25 years ago whispering through time. She pulled open her drawer. Inside, a small weathered notebook. Leather-bound, her childhood journal. She flipped through pages of scribbled dreams and half-baked ideas until she found it. The last entry before the accident. "The boy saved me. I don't know his name. I don't remember his face, but I'll find him one day. I promise." Vivian sat back, her eyes closed, and one name floated into her mind like a snowflake that never melted. Cal. The Monday after the gala, the 43rd floor of Alden Medical was unusually quiet. No one dared mention the word proposal, not in front of Vivian Alden, but they didn't need to. It buzzed through the hallways in silences louder than sound, in private Slack chats, in glances over coffee machines, in hushed whispers at the elevator. Did you see her face? Was it real? She can't actually be serious. Right. And yet the question lingered in every mind from interns to vice presidents. What does a woman like Vivian Alden see in a janitor? Nathan Greer was not amused. He'd been the one who'd nudged the MC. He'd thought it'd be funny. A little shock value for the crowd. Something to get the board buzzing. But Vivian hadn't just taken the stage. She had flipped the entire narrative. And now headlines painted her a heroine, an icon, and Nathan A. footnote in an embarrassment he couldn't even explain away. In the executive lounge, Nathan leaned against the marble bar, swirling whiskey in a crystal glass, staring out over the New York skyline with a smug smile that didn't reach his eyes. Across from him sat 2 other junior board members, Brant and Elise. All three had grown up in country clubs, boarding schools, and families where wealth wasn't earned but inherited. "So, what's the plan?" Elise asked, half a grin tugging her lipstick. Nathan took a sip. "Simple. We do what we always do. Make it worse." He smirked. "We clarify." He pulled out his phone and tapped the screen. "You've heard of charity cases. Wait until they hear how far this one was staged." That same day, Cal was in the East Wing cafeteria, lunch tray in hand, when he saw it. A tablet left on the table. Its screen playing a live-stream podcast titled Janitor Gate inside the Gala stunt everyone's talking about. A panel of suited commentators laughed as footage rolled again. Vivian kneeling, Cal stunned the ring passed into his hand. "Look at his face," one said. "That man's thinking, I just won the lottery." Or the lawsuit, another chimed in. The audience chuckled. Cal set the tray down and left. Vivian sat in her office, staring at her inbox. Over 200 unopened messages. Invitations from talk shows, requests from news anchors, even an email from a jewelry company offering to sponsor a follow-up proposal. She deleted them all, but one name made her pause. Cal Rayner, security clearance requested for West Pavilion, here Children's Choir area. The request was time-stamped 3 weeks ago, before the gala, before everything. She clicked deeper. It was for Lily, his daughter. He'd filed the paperwork in advance to volunteer during choir rehearsals after hours. No cameras, no press, just a father helping his kid. Vivian leaned back in her chair. Suddenly, she wasn't looking at a janitor. She was looking at someone who showed up, even when no one else did. Later that afternoon, in a back hallway of the foundation wing, Cal was finishing up repairs to a flickering light fixture when he heard footsteps approaching. He didn't turn around. Not until he heard her voice. "Don't run this time." He froze, then slowly lowered his wrench and turned. Vivian stood there, coat-off sleeves, slightly rolled heels, clicking softly against the tile. "You have 5 minutes," he said. "Guarded. I'll take 3. She stepped closer, holding something in her hand. It wasn't the ring. It was the drawing, Lily's drawing. 3 figures beneath snow and stars. "I didn't realize who she was," Vivian said. "Your daughter. She gave me this." Cal's jaw tightened. "I know. She said the third person was someone she hadn't met yet." Vivian's eyes met his. "But I think maybe she already had." Cal said nothing. Vivian studied him. "I didn't mean to humiliate you." He looked down. "Then you should have waited until we weren't standing on a stage in front of 600 people. I didn't plan it. That's not comforting." A pause. "Then she saw something in you," Vivian said softly. "And I did too. Before the ring. Before the cameras." Cal crossed his arms. "You don't know me. I'm starting to." He sighed. "You don't want to. Trust me." Vivian stepped closer. "Tell me anyway." Cal let the silence stretch. "Then slowly, I was a biomedical technician. Before this." Vivian blinked. "I worked in a hospital, maintained the machines that kept people alive. I liked it. I was good at it." He looked at the floor. "Then my wife got sick. Not sudden. The slow kind, the cruel kind. Insurance wouldn't cover the new trial program. Said it was experimental." Vivian knew where this was going. Her stomach sank. Cal's voice dropped lower. "The hospital she was admitted to. Part of Alden Medical's network." Vivian flinched. "She died waiting on approval forms." He looked up at her eyes, tired but steady. "And when it was over, I didn't want to fix machines anymore." He shrugged. "I just wanted to be near my daughter. So I took the job that let me sweep the floors of the building that killed her mother." Vivian didn't speak. Her throat ached with the weight of something that wasn't guilt but its distant cousin. She whispered, "I'm sorry." Cal nodded. "I don't need sorry. Then what do you need? He turned, picked up his wrench. To be left alone. Vivian stood still as he walked away. But in her chest a vow was forming. A promise she'd once written in the pages of a forgotten journal. I'll find him one day. And now that she wasn't going to lose him again. The ballroom had never known silence like this. Not during the ribbon-cutting ceremony, not during the annual winter fundraiser, not even during the moment Alden Medical reached $1 billion valuation. But now every inch of the room held its breath. Because Vivian Alden had just shattered everything. Not with rage, not with scandal, but with a raised glass and a trembling voice. Vivian stood center stage, the spotlight catching the faint shimmer of her sapphire gown. Her hand still held the wine glass aloft, but her gaze was locked on Cal Rayner. And behind him, on the balcony, Lily stood, frozen small hands gripping the railing, her mouth parted in disbelief. Vivian lowered the glass. Then she spoke. You mocked the only man in this room brave enough to be real. No one moved, no one laughed. She took a breath slow and controlled like a surgeon before an incision. You wear names, titles, legacies. He wears calluses, pain, and a heart that doesn't hide behind portfolios. A murmur rippled through the crowd, but no one dared interrupt her. Vivian turned to Cal. Her voice dropped not for theatrics, but because this part was meant for him. Only him. I don't know if I embarrassed you, or revealed what everyone else forgot, that the most important people in our lives rarely wear name tags. She reached into her clutch and pulled out something small, delicate. A silver ring, slightly worn, classic, her mother's. She held it for a moment, then knelt. Gasps echoed like dominoes falling. The rich didn't kneel. Not in heels, not in gowns, and certainly not to janitors. But Vivian Alden didn't care about optics. Not tonight. She looked up into Cal's stunned, unblinking eyes. I'm not asking for a yes. I'm asking you to believe this moment isn't about charity. It's about clarity. Because I see you. I always have. And if the world needs a stage to remember what real looks like, then let this be it. She stood, placed the ring into his palm, closed his fingers around it, and whispered just loud enough for the front row to hear, You don't need to be anything more than who you already are. That man is already enough. For a long time, no one said a word. Then, one by one, people stood, not clapping, just standing. Because something about the moment demanded reverence more than applause, like a sunrise that no one expected burning through the frost. Backstage, Nathan watched the entire thing unfold through a narrow slit in the curtain. His smugness drained. His plan backfired so thoroughly it should have earned a spot in the boardroom archives of shame. She just made him a folk hero, Brant muttered beside him. Nathan didn't answer. His mind was already working on the next move. Meanwhile, Cal stood rooted in place, the ring still warm in his hand. The crowd before him was a blur. Vivian's words rang louder than the orchestra ever had, and Lily's expression, hopeful, bright, believing, was more terrifying than any spotlight, because now he couldn't run. Not from her, not from Vivian, not from what this all meant. Vivian exited the stage heels, clicking with quiet precision. She passed the MC, whose script now felt irrelevant. She passed rows of guests who couldn't decide whether to admire her or fear her. She didn't care. But as she reached the side exit, a familiar voice stopped her. Vivian. She turned. Cal stood at the edge of the stage, still holding the ring. Their eyes met, and in that shared silence more was said than words could carry. I don't know what this is, he finally said, or what you're trying to prove. She shook her head gently. I'm not proving anything. Then why me? Vivian's voice softened. Because you're the only one in this room who didn't come here pretending. She stepped closer. I've spent my whole life building empires, rescuing companies, raising everyone's expectations, except my own." She paused, swallowing. "But you, Cal, you remind me who I wanted to be before the titles, before the strategy, before the masks." She looked at the ring again, then into his eyes. "So maybe this isn't a proposal, maybe it's a promise, that, for once, I won't walk away from what's real." Lily came bounding down the stairs moments later, weaving through the crowd. "Daddy!" She reached him just in time to see the ring. She gasped. "You said you'd never let anyone get close again?" "I did," Cal said softly. Lily looked up at Vivian, then back at her father. "Maybe this time, you can let someone in." Just a little. Cal's lips trembled. He knelt, pulling her into a hug. He didn't answer, but he didn't say no either. That night, headlines exploded. Billionaire CEO turns Gala into love, letter to the working class. Janitor steals the spotlight and maybe her heart. Power, poise, and a proposal. No one saw coming, but the people closest to the story said nothing. Vivian didn't give interviews. Cal didn't explain himself. And Lily. She just drew a new picture. 3 people. Under snow, under stars, this time holding hands. And the caption read, "She didn't fix him." He reminded her what healing looks like. The headlines didn't stop. By Tuesday morning, the video had crossed 12 million views. By noon, it was 21. Clips of Vivian, kneeling, her voice steady, her hand holding a silver ring, flooded every news feed, every panel discussion, every armchair podcast. Some hailed her a hero. Some said she was redefining leadership. Others weren't as kind. "This is a stunt. She's protecting her brand. She's lost it. No serious CEO does this. And, for a janitor, please." But Vivian stayed silent. Not out of shame. Because what she felt wasn't something she could defend in 280 characters. It wasn't performative. It was personal. Cal hadn't answered her calls. Not once. And she didn't blame him. He was back at work the next morning, mop in hand, pushing it across a hallway of freshly waxed tile. He kept his head down. Let others speak first if they needed to. Most didn't. But the whispers followed. "Is that him? That's her janitor. He's kinda normal looking, huh?" He didn't look up, didn't respond. He just worked, like always. Only this time he felt like every polished floor was a stage and every hallway had invisible curtains waiting to rise again. That night, in the quiet of their apartment, Lily curled up on the couch beside him, her knees tucked to her chest. Her sketchbook rested in her lap, half-finished drawings scattered between them, crayon snowstick figures' hearts. But tonight she wasn't drawing. She was staring. At him. "Are you mad at her?" she asked. Cal didn't respond right away. He reached for his mug lukewarm tea and took a sip. "I don't know what I feel." Lily looked down. "She made you look like a prince." He smiled faintly. "I'm no prince, sweetheart." "Yeah," she said softly. "But maybe she wasn't trying to save you." He turned to her. She looked like someone who was finally being brave. "Like you taught me to be." Her words hit harder than any headline. Sometimes, people don't kneel because they think you're better. They kneel because they finally see what they never were brave enough to say. Cal swallowed hard. "She made the whole room stare at me like I didn't belong." Lily tilted her head. Maybe they stared because they weren't used to someone who did. Vivian stared out the window of her penthouse suite. The city sprawled below her like a living map of everything she'd built and everything she was now risking. Her phone vibrated again. Still no reply. She picked it up, opened her notes app, and typed a message she wouldn't send Cal. "I didn't kneel to shame you. I knelt because it was the only way I knew how to level the ground between us, not in status but in silence. Yours hides pain. Mine hides fear. And I don't want to live in silence anymore. I don't want to fix you. I want to understand you. Vivian." She stared at it, then hit save. not send. The next day, the foundation office was unusually tense. Nathan Greer, now unofficially demoted to don't speak in meetings, watched from the sidelines as Vivian entered the boardroom. She didn't flinch, didn't apologize. "Let's talk budget," she said flatly. Someone cleared their throat. "Before that, should we discuss public response?" Vivian looked up. "If you're asking whether I regret showing respect to a man who's earned it every day of his life, then no. I don't." A pause. "I built this company on ethics. If defending someone like Cal Rayner is controversial, then maybe we've forgotten what ethics look like." Silence. She continued. "He didn't ask to be a symbol. We made him one. Now we fix it on his terms, not ours." And just like that, the meeting began. But something shifted that day. A respect that couldn't be voted on. That evening, Cal sat by the window, Lily asleep on his lap, her head rising and falling with each breath. He stared at the ring on the counter, untouched since that night. Then he picked up the drawing she'd finished before bedtime. 3 figures beneath a snowy sky. But now there were names. Me Daddy, and underneath the third one, She sees us. He stared at it for a long time, then finally whispered, "Maybe. That's the problem. No one's seen me in a long time." And she did. His phone buzzed. Vivian Alden one new message, but it wasn't a text. It was a photo of her journal, the last page, handwritten. "He saved me. I never got to thank him. One day I will." Underneath it was a voice memo. Just 5 words. Her voice quiet, steady, vulnerable. "I think that day is today." Cal didn't respond. But he didn't delete it either. And when he looked at the ring one last time, he didn't put it away. He placed it in his pocket, just in case. The snow came early that Saturday. Soft flakes dusted the sidewalks of Brooklyn like powdered sugar, muting the noise of the world. In the apartment above the corner bakery, Lily was curled on the living room floor, crayons spread around her like a rainbow explosion. Cal stirred oatmeal on the stove, glancing over every so often. She was humming again. He hadn't heard her hum in weeks. Her newest drawing was stretched across 3 taped-together pages, a winter scene with 3 figures walking toward a cabin surrounded by pines. The sky above was filled with stars, and in one corner, scribbled in blue crayon, were the words, "The night he saved her." Cal froze. That wasn't something she could have known. He crossed the room and crouched beside her. "Sweetheart, where did you get this idea?" Lily looked up thoughtful. "I had a dream." He waited, and I think I was her. Her. The girl in the snow. The one Daddy carried. Cal's breath caught. "Vivian," he whispered. Lily nodded like it was obvious. I think that's why she knew the stars felt safe. Because she remembered them too. She handed him the drawing. "You should show it to her. Maybe it'll help her remember." Vivian Alden stood in the quiet of her home library, fingers trailing along the spine of a faded leather notebook, the kind she used to fill with childish poems and half-formed wishes. She hadn't opened it in years. Not since Montana. The storm, the boy, the stars. That night had always lived in a hazy blur like a half-remembered dream lodged somewhere between trauma and miracle. But when Lily handed her the drawing 2 days ago, something inside snapped awake. She'd taken it home and stared at it under a reading lamp until midnight. And then, as if guided by something beyond memory, she'd gone digging. There, tucked inside the back cover of her journal, was a folded envelope yellowed with age. She opened it with trembling hands. A child's handwriting sprawled across the page. "Dear whoever you are, I was scared. I thought I was going to die. But then you came. You didn't say anything heroic. You just carried me. You were freezing. I saw your lips bleeding from the wind. But you didn't stop. I don't know your name. I don't even know if you remember me. But I remember you. And I want to be someone who helps others the way you helped me. Someday." I hope I get to say thank you. Vivian, age 11. She held the letter against her chest, eyes glassy, and she whispered, barely audible, "It was you." Sunday afternoon. The Alden Foundation's private gallery was empty except for one janitor and a little girl. Cal moved carefully across the polished floors, mop in hand, pretending to work, while Lily stared at the painting on the wall, an oil rendering of the Gala's final moment. Someone had commissioned it from a viral photo. Vivian mid-kneel. Cal frozen in spotlight. The crowd in shadows. "Do I look taller in the painting?" he joked. Lily giggled. "A little." He turned serious. "You sure she won't think this is weird? You're giving her her own memory, Daddy. That's not weird. That's healing." He looked at her, this tiny human with a soul that always felt wiser than her age. "You really think it's okay to give her something this personal?" Lily shrugged. "You gave me my mom's story. Maybe this is hers." Vivian returned to her office on Monday to find a package on her desk. No name, no label, just a sketch taped to the front. She recognized it immediately. Lily's drawing. Inside the envelope was a photocopy of the drawing, and something else, a pressed winter flower, brittle but preserved. On the back of it, in neat handwriting, just one line, "Some things survive storms. Even us." Cal Vivian's throat closed. She sat down holding the flower like a relic. Later that night, she stood on the rooftop of her building wrapped in a wool coat, the city a sea of lights beneath her. She pressed her phone to her ear. His voicemail answered. She left no name, no introduction. Just this: "You carried me through a blizzard once. I didn't know your name, but I remembered your silence. And I think I've been chasing that kind of safety my entire life. Thank you for not letting me disappear. If you're willing, maybe we can help each other remember who we were before the world told us who we had to be." Vivian. Cal listened to the message 3 times before Lily found him sitting in the dark. "You're crying," she whispered. He didn't deny it. She remembers. The next morning, Cal left a single folded note at the front desk of Alden Tower. No signature. Just a drawing done in pencil. Rough but careful. 2 children side by side under a snow-covered pine tree. One carrying the other. The sky above them filled with stars. And underneath, 4 words, "You were never alone." The next time Cal saw Vivian was not at a gala. It wasn't at a fundraiser. It wasn't in a press conference or a marble hallway full of suits and careful smiles. It was in the quietest wing of St. Aurelia's Community Hospital just after dusk. Vivian had asked to meet somewhere real. Not staged, not symbolic, just real. She waited for him by the pediatric therapy garden coat folded over her arm, her hands bare, her expression unguarded for the first time since the night they met. Cal approached slowly, holding a manila folder. No fanfare, no ring, no camera flashes. Just years of silence and the weight of everything that had been left unsaid between them. "You came," she said softly. "You asked." He handed her the folder. She took it confused until she opened it. Inside were incident reports, emails, system logs, all dated from 7 years ago. Many were redacted. Some had been stamped internal use only. But one file caught her breath. Patient Emily Rayner status admitted. Unresponsive to treatment. Recommendation wait list for experimental program pending insurance clearance. She looked up. "Emily was your wife." Cal nodded. Vivian's voice broke. "She was denied access to a program under my company's name." He didn't speak. Didn't need to. The silence spoke louder. "I didn't know," she whispered. "God, Cal." "I didn't know." "I did," he said. "I knew everything." His jaw tightened. "I knew the hospital didn't have the funding because someone higher up froze the budget. I knew the drug was ready, just not for people like her. Not for people who didn't come from the right side of town or didn't have the right last name." He looked away. "So I quit. I didn't fight. I didn't file a grievance. I just walked out, and became the man who mopped the floors I used to polish with pride. Vivian's eyes shimmered. Why give this to me now? Cal exhaled. Because you're not the woman I thought you were, and I'm not the man the world assumed I was. A long pause. I was never just a janitor, Vivian, but I needed to become one. To remember how to be a father, and maybe to unlearn how to be angry. She stepped closer, quiet, careful. You carried me through a storm once, she said. Now let me walk with you through this one. Cal met her eyes. He saw no pity there, no guilt, just something fierce and unwavering. Resolve. Later that evening, Vivian sat alone in her office with the folder open beside her. She called no assistant. She turned on no light. Just the glow of the desk lamp and her own conscience rising like a tide she could no longer ignore. The following week, Vivian Alden stood before the board of directors, 12 men and women who had once crowned her the youngest CEO in the company's history. But today she wasn't seeking their approval. She was delivering a reckoning. 7 years ago, she began voice clear, and even a patient under our care was denied access to a life-saving treatment because of cost bureaucracy and internal negligence. Murmurs, shuffling papers, raised eyebrows. She continued. That patient died, and her husband, an Alden employee, was left with no answers. Until now. She held up the folder. I've reviewed the records, cross-checked the authorizations. The decision was buried under layers of misdirection and corporate shielding. She paused. But it happened under our name, which means we are accountable, not for liability for humanity. A director leaned forward. Vivian, if we open that door, do you know what kind of precedent you're setting? She met his eyes without flinching. The kind where people trust us again. The press release came 2 days later. Alden Medical Holdings announces Transparency Initiative acknowledges past failure in patient care, establishes $50 Compassion Fund in honor of Emily Rayner. But what mattered more than the headlines was what happened after. That Friday, Cal returned to the hospital not as a janitor, but as a guest of honor. He wasn't there for ceremony. He was there for a tour. Vivian walked beside him as they passed the new wing under renovation, the Emily Rayner Pediatric Recovery Center. I didn't ask for this, he said. I know. Then why she stopped walking. Because the world should know your wife's name. Because your daughter should grow up knowing her mother mattered. And because the boy who once saved a girl in the snow just saved an entire future of children without even asking to. They reached the end of the hallway. Vivian turned to him. You said once you were never just a janitor. He nodded. Then, let me say this as clearly as I can. You are not defined by what the world called you. You are defined by what you never stopped doing, even when no one was watching. Cal looked at her for a long moment, then quietly, almost broken. You're not what I expected. Vivian smiled faintly. Neither were you. That night, Lily drew another picture. This time it was a building with her mother's name on the side and kids playing under a bright sky. And in the corner, 3 figures holding hands. Underneath, in block letters, Hope doesn't wear suits. Sometimes it wears overalls. The boardroom had never been this quiet. Vivian stood at the head of the long oak table. No slideshow, no buzzwords, no corporate jargon. Just a folder in one hand and truth in the other. Behind her on the screen was a single slide, black background, white letters. We missed the moment to do the right thing. This is our second chance. Across the room sat the 12 most powerful people at Alden Medical Holdings. Men and women who could approve billion-dollar acquisitions and bury tragedies with a single vote. But not today. Today, they were listening. Because Vivian Alden was not just speaking as a CEO. She was speaking as a woman who had been carried through a storm, literally and figuratively, and was no longer willing to look the other way. I've asked Cal Rayner to join us this afternoon. The room shifted uncomfortably. Not as a janitor, she continued. Not even as a whistleblower, but as someone who lived what our systems allowed to happen. Someone who held the consequences in his arms while we approved bonuses and moved on. She looked to the door. Cal stepped in. No suit, no tie. Just the quiet dignity of a man who had learned to carry grief without letting it break his spine. He paused for a moment, taking in the room, then walked to the table and set a stack of documents down. "I don't know how this works," he began. "I'm not a lawyer. I'm not here to accuse, but I am here to tell the truth." He opened the folder. "These are notes from my time as a biomedical technician, internal communications, repair requests, system logs I printed out before I left. None of this was supposed to leave the hospital." He met their eyes. "But it did. Because I did. And I've carried it in a box under my bed for 7 years. Not because I wanted revenge, because I couldn't explain to my daughter why her mother wasn't saved." He paused. "You don't need to read every page. You need to understand one sentence." He turned the last page around to face them. It was highlighted. Cost override initiated. Experimental treatment deferred. Patient not prioritized. He stepped back. That's all it took to lose her. No one spoke. Not because they didn't want to, because they couldn't. Vivian broke the silence. "I've reviewed every case denied under our legacy policies. Dozens are flagged. Some patients eventually got care, some didn't. But the truth is, we became efficient, at the cost of being human." She turned to Cal. "Today, we clean that up." That afternoon, Alden Medical announced the formation of a new internal task force, Operation Restore. Its mission: audit all previously denied care cases. Implement new ethics checkpoints across all departments. And, most importantly, make room at the table for voices like Cal's. Not just janitors, but nurses, technicians, volunteers. The ones who see the cracks long before the board does. The announcement went viral. But this time it wasn't because of scandal or spectacle. It was because of hope. That night, Cal stood outside the new wing under renovation. His name was now listed quietly on a donor wall. Not as a benefactor, but as a catalyst. Vivian joined him on the sidewalk, scarf pulled around her neck, a thermos of hot cider in hand. "Busy day," she said. Cal chuckled. "Understatement." "You okay?" He nodded, still standing. She handed him the thermos. "I figured you could use something warm." He took a sip, then glanced at the glass door of the building behind them. "You did it," he said. "You really took them on." Vivian looked down. "No," she said. "We did." A pause. Then Cal's voice quiet. "You know, when I started this job, people barely looked at me. Not in a cruel way, just like I was part of the wallpaper. It didn't bother me at first. Then one day I realized I'd stopped seeing myself too." He glanced at her. "But then, you stood up. And suddenly, I remembered what it felt like to be visible." Vivian's breath hitched, but she held his gaze. "I didn't do it for the headlines. I know. I did it because the girl you saved in the snow never forgot what it felt like to be carried by someone who didn't ask for applause." Cal looked down at the steam rising from the thermos. "And I never forgot what it felt like to carry someone. And finally be seen." From the lobby window, Lily watched them from afar. She smiled, then reached into her backpack and pulled out a fresh page from her sketchbook. 3 people, 1 mop, 1 clipboard, 1 thermos, all under a banner that read, "Cleaning up the past," and "Building what comes next." The Gala Hall had been transformed, not into a palace of power or polished luxury, but into something gentler, more human. Gone were the towering ice sculptures, the velvet ropes, and the sea of status symbols. In their place were warm lights strung from corner to corner, family-style tables, and a stage flanked by easels, each holding a framed drawing by children who had once been patients of the Emily Rayner Recovery Wing. At the front of the room, one drawing stood taller than the rest. 3 figures under snowfall. A little girl, a woman, and a man in blue work clothes, his hand wrapped around a broom. And something else. A silver ring. The caption beneath, written in blocky handwriting, the second time she proposed. He said yes. Backstage, Lily adjusted her dress nervously, gripping her note cards like a seasoned speaker about to deliver a TED Talk. "You sure you remember your lines?" Vivian teased gently. Lily nodded. "I'm not the one who's nervous." Vivian raised a brow. "Oh, and who is?" She glanced across the curtain. Cal was pacing slowly near the sound booth, tugging at the collar of the only blazer he owned. "Daddy's gonna faint," Lily whispered. Vivian smiled, heart full. "He might, but he won't run." 10 minutes later, the lights dimmed. Vivian stepped on stage first. She didn't wear diamonds tonight. Just a soft navy dress, a silver locket around her neck, and shoes flat enough to walk beside any man not ahead of him. She took a breath and spoke into the microphone. 3 months ago, I did something no CEO is ever advised to do. I led with my heart instead of my brand. I didn't do it for headlines. I did it because the little girl I used to be remembered the boy who saved her life, and I finally saw the man he became. She looked toward the wings. Tonight isn't about business. It's about restoration, of truth, of legacy, of love. The kind that doesn't ask to be seen just to be believed. The room was still, not quiet from politeness but from reverence. Then Lily stepped forward, tiny heels clicking, shoulders back. She held her note cards like a pro. "My name is Lily," she began, "and this is my daddy." Chuckles rippled gently. "He used to work late so I could go to school and have peanut butter sandwiches that didn't taste like sadness. He used to hum when he was scared and mop like it was an art. But what people didn't know was—" She paused. "My daddy didn't just clean floors. He cleaned up a broken system. He made a place where kids like me have hope. And tonight, I'm going to help give him something back." Gasps rose softly as Cal stepped onto the stage. Lily handed him a ring box, one sheet decorated with glitter stars and duct tape. He turned to Vivian. She froze, his voice steady. "The first time you raised your glass, I wasn't ready." He opened the box. Inside, a simple platinum ring, no diamond, just an inscription. "You saw me." He held it out. "But I'm ready now, because for the first time in a long time, I'm not cleaning up someone else's mess. I'm choosing to build something new with you." Vivian's eyes filled instantly. She didn't hesitate. She held out her hand. "I don't want a fairy tale. I want this. The grit, the heart, the quiet mornings with burnt toast and crooked hugs." He slipped the ring onto her finger. "Then let's write something real." The crowd rose, not in a roar of applause but in something deeper. A standing ovation that felt like healing. Later that night they stood by the drawing display. Cal traced the crayon snowflakes on Lily's artwork. "You know," he said, "I think this is better than any photo we could have taken." Vivian leaned in. She didn't draw a wedding. She drew a family. Cal looked at her. "Isn't that what this is?" Vivian smiled. "It's what it's always been." And just before they turned to leave, Lily added one last touch. A tiny heart in the corner of the drawing. Inside it she wrote, "Not almost. This time. Forever." 3 months later. The snow had returned to Manhattan not in flurries or storms this time, but as a soft, steady whisper. A hush over the city. A clean slate. Cal stood in front of the new wing at Alden Medical Children's Center, buttoning his coat as he looked up at the brushed steel letters above the glass doors. The Emily Rayner Pediatric Healing Center. For those who keep showing up. He still couldn't read it without swallowing hard. Not out of grief, but because for the first time in a very long time, it didn't feel like an ending. It felt like arrival. Inside the building buzzed with life. Therapists in brightly colored scrubs, children rolling down the hallway in wheelchairs decked out like rocket ships, murals painted by patients and volunteers alike. No sterile white walls here, just warmth. And in the center of the welcome atrium stood Vivian, helping a young boy pick a crayon color from a therapy cart. She wore jeans today, a cozy sweater, no title badge, just a woman with her sleeves rolled up kneeling beside a child who'd been told the world moves too fast for kids like him. The boy pointed to a pale blue crayon. "Sky," he said. Vivian smiled. "That's a good one. Big, quiet, and always there." She looked up and saw Cal watching her. She didn't say a word, just smiled like she'd been waiting to see him her whole life. Later that afternoon, they sat on the floor of the sensory room, shoes off, watching Lily help younger kids stack blocks into wobbly towers. Cal leaned back on his palms. "I used to think healing meant forgetting," he said. Vivian turned to him. "And now?" He looked at her. Really looked. "Now, I think healing means remembering differently. Not erasing the scar, but letting it remind you of how far you've come." She nodded slowly. "You didn't just change this place, Cal. You reminded it what it was meant to be." He smiled. "Sounds like something someone said to me once, right before she handed me a ring on stage in front of 600 stunned billionaires." Vivian laughed, then quieted. "I used to think strength was keeping everything under control," she admitted. "Now I think it's allowing people to see what scares you, and still choosing to stay anyway." He took her hand. "Then we're strong as hell." That evening, the three of them walked home through the snow. Vivian carried Lily's backpack slung over one shoulder. Cal carried a canvas wrapped in brown paper. Lily carried a thermos of hot chocolate like it was the Holy Grail. They laughed about nothing. About how Vivian always added too much cinnamon. About how Lily was convinced the therapy dog secretly spoke French. About how the city felt different, softer now. They reached their building just as the first streetlight flickered on. Upstairs, their apartment had changed too. Not bigger, not fancier, just fuller. Cal hung his coat. Vivian lit a candle in the kitchen. Lily ran ahead to her room and came back out holding a nail, a hammer, and a look of pure mischief. Now she said, "It's time." Time for what Cal asked. She pointed to the largest wall in the living room. "For this." She unwrapped the canvas. It was her newest painting. 3 people hand in hand under a snowfall of glowing stars. No longer stick figures. Each face had details, laughter lines, warmth in the eyes, the hint of a memory shared between them all. And beneath it, written in careful curly lettering, she wasn't saving him. He was coming back to save her again. Vivian touched the frame quiet. "I don't deserve this," she whispered. Cal wrapped an arm around her. "None of us deserve grace, but sometimes we still get it." He looked at Lily. "Ready to hang it?" She beamed. "I've been waiting my whole life." They stood back and looked at the wall. There were no more empty spaces. Just them. A family that shouldn't have found each other, and yet did. Vivian reached for Cal's hand. It started with a storm. He nodded, and ended in a room where we were finally seen. "No," Lily said, curling between them like the moon between stars. "It didn't end here. It just started the part where we're not alone anymore." Outside, the city breathed. Inside, someone pressed play on the old record player. Jazz filled the apartment soft golden like something that always belonged. And as they danced slowly in the glow of string lights and shared memory, Cal looked around the room that once felt temporary, the room that once felt like survival. Now it felt like home, not because of where they stood, but because of who they chose to stand with. A story of being seen and loved exactly as you are. And maybe that's the lesson tonight, that no one is just anything. Not just a janitor, not just a CEO, not just a little girl with a crayon. Sometimes The people we overlook are the ones who hold us together when everything else falls apart. So, now I want to hear from you. Where are you listening from tonight? Are you joining us from the snowy mountains of Colorado, the peaceful backroads of East Texas, or maybe somewhere quiet on the coast of Maine? Drop your city or state in the comments below. Let's remind each other we're never as alone as we think. And if this story touched your heart in any way, if it reminded you of someone you once were, or someone you hope to become, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. We've got many more stories like this coming your way. Stories about ordinary people doing extraordinary things, and finding love, hope, and healing in the most unexpected places. And as always, I'll be reading your comments every single one. So thank you. Thank you for spending your time with this story. Thank you for feeling with us, and until next time, keep believing in second chances. Keep looking for the ones who see you, and never ever underestimate the power of kindness. Good night, and take care of your heart.